You have no idea what I did in the end. If someone had told me just a year ago that I'd outmaneuver my wife and her lover, take everything they build on my back, and walk away not just free, but triumphant, I would have laughed in disbelief. But life, as I learned the hard way, has a twisted sense of humor. And betrayal? It doesn't knock politely, it kicks your door in when you're least expecting it. My name's Daniel Cooper. I'm 38, live in Phoenix, Arizona, and until a few months ago, I thought I had the kind of life most men dream about. I run a logistics firm with a small but tight-knit team, nothing flashy, just solid business. My wife, Marissa, is, or was, an operations manager at a tech startup. Smart, confident, magnetic. The kind of woman who walks into a room and turns heads without trying. We met in college. She was studying business administration. I was already knee-deep in night classes and side hustles. She challenged me, made me laugh, kept me grounded when the world spun too fast. We dated for 5 years, married for 7. No kids, her decision, mostly. Let's build the empire first, she used to say. I didn't argue. I trusted her. With everything. That trust nearly destroyed me. For a long time, I thought the late-night calls, the last-minute, emergency flights, the extra hours at the office, were just part of her grind. Marissa had always been ambitious. She played big, talked bigger. She was a closer, a natural negotiator. So when she said she was flying to San Diego for meetings or Chicago for client-facing strategy sessions, I didn't question it. Why would I? But then one Saturday morning, I was cleaning the kitchen while she showered. Her work iPad buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch her devices. I respected her privacy. But this time, the screen lit up with something strange. A calendar alert. Dinner with Eli. 7:30 p.m. Laubirch. No mention of a company name. Just that. Eli. It hit me in the gut. Not because I knew who Eli was, but because I didn't. When I asked her later, casually, about her trip, she said she was swamped with board meetings and barely had time to breathe. She lied without blinking. That's what chilled me the most. Not just the lie, but how smooth she was about it. Polished. Practiced. That night, I barely slept. I started rewinding everything. Every business trip. Every weekend away. Every time she declined a dinner with our friends because she was exhausted from travel. My stomach churned. Something wasn't right. But suspicion wasn't proof. And I wasn't going to confront her with just a gut feeling. So I did what any man with half a brain and a whole heart on the line might do. I started digging. Carefully. Quietly. The next week, while she was in Chicago, allegedly, I used the Find My app to check where her iPad had last synced. It was in San Diego. At a boutique hotel in the Gaslamp Quarter. Not the chain hotel she'd booked, but a luxury place known more for romantic weekends than board meetings. I told myself maybe she switched accommodations. Maybe a client upgraded her room. Maybe I was paranoid. But then came the receipt. A joint credit card charge, 2 entrees, a bottle of Malbec, and dessert at Laubirch, the same place in her calendar. That night. The night she told me she was reviewing quarterly data with leadership. Still, I didn't explode. I didn't throw accusations. I needed more. Over the next few weeks, I tracked her travel through a mix of synced devices, credit card history, and one favor from a buddy in IT security. I found patterns. Repeating city names. Recurring dinner spots. Even a flower delivery to her hotel room in Denver under the name E. Ramirez. And that's when I found out who Eli was. Her ex. From college. The one she used to call a charming loser. Apparently, he'd turned entrepreneur and failed at least twice. But now he was trying again. A sustainability startup. Marissa had invested. And not just her money. Our money. Joint funds. Over $50,000. Quietly transferred in increments. I didn't even notice because I trusted her with the books. That's when it stopped being about cheating. It became something else. She wasn't just betraying me emotionally. She was financially entwined with the man she was sleeping with. That's a different kind of betrayal. Strategic. Cold. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was done playing nice. You see, I could have stormed in, shouted, demanded explanations. But I've been in business long enough to know, emotions cloud judgment. If I was going to do this, I'd do it right. You can't imagine what I did in the end. But trust me, you're going to want to stick around to find out. I didn't sleep much after that. Not just because of the lies I'd uncovered, but because of how skillfully she wove them. That's what really got to me. She wasn't impulsive. No, Marissa was a planner. She didn't just cheat, she structured it, layered it in plausible deniability. She was meticulous, almost surgical, in how she kept her two lives apart. And that's when I knew I couldn't just confront her. I had to outthink her. The next few weeks, I played the role of the perfect husband. Coffee in the morning, smiles in the evening, a kiss on the cheek before she left for client meetings. Inside, though, I was studying her like a case file. I started documenting everything. Each flight, each timestamp, each suspicious transaction. I built a timeline. I wanted it airtight. One night, she left for a tech conference in Seattle. I waited until her flight landed, then checked her location. San Francisco. Not even the right state. I took a long walk after that. My hands shook from the sheer absurdity of it. I realized she wasn't just lying because she was ashamed. She was lying because she believed I'd never figure it out. That I was too trusting, too busy, too wrapped up in my work to look beneath the surface. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. I had been checked out. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that providing for her was enough. I built the house, paid the bills, remembered anniversaries, but I stopped paying attention. The kind of attention that matters. She noticed, and she used it. But that's not an excuse. One afternoon, I met with her co-worker Rob under the guise of discussing a joint charity auction Marissa was organizing. Rob's one of those people who doesn't know when to stop talking, and I was counting on that. So Marissa said she'll be in Chicago next week? I asked casually. Rob blinked. Chicago? Nah, she's not even on the invite list. She's been working remotely all month. He didn't even realize what he'd given me. Just laughed it off and went back to his iced latte. When I got home that evening, I looked her straight in the eyes as she told me about her flight delay at O'Hare. I nodded, handed her a glass of wine, and kissed her on the forehead. I had enough to confirm she was lying, but I didn't stop. I needed to know how far it went. So I called a private investigator. Discreet, reputable, expensive, worth every dollar. Within a week, I had surveillance photos, her with Eli at a vineyard in Napa Valley, them holding hands at a gallery opening, her in gym clothes, entering what I thought was a co-working space, but was actually Eli's condo. Then came the bank records. She was funneling money into his startup, much more than I thought. $65,000. In just 4 months. She was keeping him afloat with our money. But that's not what hit me hardest. What hit me was discovering that I had funded the latest expansion of his failing business through a wire transfer from our joint account, a transfer I signed myself because she told me it was for a mutual investment opportunity with her firm. She looked me in the eye, reassured me, said it was low risk, high potential, and I believed her. That betrayal? That was different. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about trust, financial trust, strategic trust. She used my belief in us against me, and I wasn't even close to done learning what she'd hidden. The investigator called me one morning, unusually early. There's something you should know, he said. Eli's startup is on the verge of bankruptcy. No revenue, mounting debt. If it folds, you'll be liable for at least 40% of the investment, unless you act fast. I felt the room spin. Not only had she betrayed me, but she'd tied me legally to his sinking ship. And she hadn't said a word. Not one. That night, as we ate dinner, her laughing about some client call, I looked at her and realized she had no clue that I knew. And that was my advantage. I smiled, nodded at her story, and said, "You know, I've been thinking about investing in something new. Something personal." She tilted her head. "Really? What kind of investment?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Something I think will pay off in the long run. But first, I need to do a little due diligence." She smiled, completely unaware that I wasn't talking about business. She had no idea I was already building the case that would unravel everything she'd built behind my back. And the best part? She'd help me do it, without even realizing. I didn't just want to catch her in the act. I wanted to understand why. What was it about him, Eli, that made her risk everything we built? She once called him a directionless dreamer, a man who couldn't commit to anything beyond the next beer or vague startup pitch. And now she was bankrolling him, flying out to see him like he was the axis her world spun on. I started digging into Eli Ramirez's past, not as a jealous husband, but as a strategist. I needed to know who I was really up against. His LinkedIn was a train wreck of half-finished ventures, vague titles, and buzzwords that said nothing. Innovation catalyst, founder in resilient space, visionary at scale. Translation: a man with more slogans than revenue. Public records told a more brutal story. 2 LLCs dissolved for tax delinquency. One civil lawsuit settled quietly. An investor had sued him for misrepresentation. There was a foreclosure on a downtown loft 3 years ago, and credit card debt that had ballooned into collections. This wasn't a rising star. This was a drowning man looking for a lifeboat. And my wife handed him one, padded with my money. She didn't just fall for an old flame. She tried to rescue him, support him, maybe even save him. Was it guilt? Nostalgia? A savior complex? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. Her loyalty had shifted, and she was doing everything in her power to keep me in the dark. Until now. With the investigators' help, I quietly bought into Eli's business through a shell company. I acquired a 20% stake, just enough to get my foot in the door without raising suspicion. Then I did what I do best. I analyzed the logistics, supply chains, vendor relationships, cash flow, or rather, the lack of it. I didn't tell Marissa. Not yet. Instead, I started asking more questions at home, carefully chosen ones. Hey, remember that app idea you said your firm might invest in? The sustainable one? She barely blinked. Oh, you mean the eco-logistics platform? Yeah, still early stage. A full lie. She was on the advisory board. Her name was listed in the investor presentation I had downloaded days earlier. And the company wasn't early stage, it was bleeding cash and 2 months away from collapse unless new funding arrived. And guess who the only viable investor left was? Me. That's when I realized something else. They needed me. Eli had no business acumen, no real structure. Marissa had the money and the connections, but not the operational chops. Without me, even unknowingly, they were toast. It was almost poetic. I started asking around discreetly, my financial advisor, some old college contacts who had pivoted into angel investing. I wanted to see if anyone had heard about Eli's company. Oh yeah, one guy said, chuckling. He tried to pitch me last year. Said he had an inside line on some green tech revolution. Sounded like a scam, to be honest. The more I learned, the more obvious it became. Marissa wasn't just cheating on me emotionally or physically, she was gambling our future on a man who couldn't balance a checkbook. But here's the part that really twisted the knife. One of Eli's pitch decks had a section on core partners. Right there, in the middle of the slide, was our company logo. My company. She used my business name to add legitimacy to his fantasy. I felt sick. She never asked for permission. Never even mentioned it. She was leveraging my reputation, our hard work, to sell snake oil. That's when I stopped being just the betrayed husband. That's when I became the architect of their collapse. I called the investigator again. Told him to focus on one thing, what legal documents Marissa had signed on behalf of our business. I needed to know if she forged anything or worse, used my name. The answer wasn't immediate, but I could feel the heat rising. That same week, Marissa walked into the kitchen one evening, all smiles. You know, she said casually, Eli's thinking about bringing in a new partner. Someone with real logistics experience. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Anyone I'd know? She hesitated for a second. Just a guy we met at the sustainability summit. Very smart. I smiled. Well, I hope he reads the fine print. She didn't laugh. And for a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Maybe suspicion. Maybe fear. She was smart enough to know I wasn't stupid, but not smart enough to realize I was 10 steps ahead. At night, I stared at the ceiling thinking not about her betrayal, but about the game I was playing. The setup. The trap. They didn't just fall in love behind my back. They tied their survival to my name. And I had the power to cut the rope whenever I chose. But first, I needed them to ask me for help. Because when they did, I'd make sure the price of salvation was everything they had left. You never forget the moment when betrayal shifts from emotion to numbers. It was a Tuesday, quiet, forgettable, until I opened the financial spreadsheet that changed everything. I'd reviewed our finances before, of course. I handled most of it. But like most couples, we had a rhythm. She managed the personal expenses. I tracked the business. We trusted each other. Or rather, I did. That day, I started from scratch. I logged into every account, pulled every statement, cross-referenced every transaction from the last 18 months. And then I saw it. Transfers labeled consulting retainer, all routed to a generic LLC. Small amounts, spread out $1, $200 here, $3,000 there. Enough to avoid flags. But when I added them up, $87,650. Gone. Moved to a shell company that, after a bit of digging, I found was registered in Nevada under a mailing service. I cross-checked the registration agent, traced an IP address from a PDF invoice she once forwarded me. Guess who it led to? Eli. The man had nothing. No assets. No property. But he had my wife and my money. And Marissa had been feeding him like a parasite clinging to our account. What shocked me most wasn't the amount, it was how carefully she disguised it. How much effort she'd put into making it look like legitimate business expenses. She wasn't stupid. She knew I'd see through anything obvious. So she had spent months building an alternate world, where Eli was a green tech consultant, and she was collaborating with him on environmental sourcing models. All fiction. And I was funding it. I sat back in my chair that day and stared at the screen. Not with rage. Not even sadness. Just cold focus. I needed a new plan. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Warren, a forensic accountant who owed me a favor. I told him I needed a quiet assessment of a partner's personal and professional holdings. Give him the name Marissa Cooper and let him run. He called me 2 days later, voice low. Dan, you sure you want the full picture? Yes. Then sit down. I did. Marissa had opened a separate line of credit 14 months ago, using our business as implied collateral without my knowledge. She hadn't defaulted yet, but she was skimming from both sides, taking from our joint savings and betting it on Eli's vaporware startup, while pulling credit under my company's reputation. If he failed, which he would, we were both going down, unless I separated legally and financially fast. And that's when the next card fell. Warren said, there's also a second account, hidden under a trust in her maiden name. You're not listed anywhere on it. Trust. As in, she didn't trust me. She was preparing to walk if things went bad. And she'd made sure to keep a stash tucked away where I couldn't touch it. I couldn't believe it, but at the same time, I could. The woman I thought I married would never do this. But the woman she became? She was playing chess while I was still setting the board. That night, I looked at her as she folded laundry on the couch. I watched how casually she moved, how normal it all looked. Like everything was fine. But I saw the cracks now. The false ease in her smile. The quiet calculations behind her eyes. She was living two lives and thought she was winning both. I began taking my own steps. I met with a corporate attorney, had him quietly review the operating agreement of our business. We amended clauses to limit unauthorized liability. I began moving certain assets, legally, into protective structures. Not to hide, but to shield. Because I knew what was coming. And so did she. A week later, she brought up Eli. Casually, like it was a new idea. He might need some bridge funding, she said, sipping wine. Just temporary, to get to the next phase. I told him I might talk to you about it. I nodded slowly. Sounds interesting, I said. She lit up, like she'd been waiting for this. Really? Because I think it could be big. Like, early Facebook big. I smiled. If you believe in it, I'll take a look. And that's when I knew I had her. Because now she needed me. And when someone needs you, they get sloppy. She started sending me PDFs, financial models, emails from Eli, some real, some obviously embellished. I pretended to be intrigued. I even suggested a meeting. Maybe I should sit down with him, I said. Her eyes gleamed. You do that? Oh yeah. If we're talking real investment, I want to know who I'm betting on. And she agreed. I had the trap. I had the bait. I just needed the right time to spring it. But before that, I had one more move to make. I booked a consultation with a divorce lawyer. Not because I was ready to file yet, but because when the final move came, I wanted every paper in place, every asset accounted for, every loophole closed. Because when you go to war with someone you once loved, you don't swing wildly. You aim straight for the heart. I didn't tell her when I scheduled the meeting with Eli. I waited until the day before, sitting across from her at breakfast, watching her butter toast like nothing was out of the ordinary. You free tomorrow around 3? I asked, casual as ever. She looked up, curious. For what? I shrugged. I figured it's time I met your visionary. If I'm going to invest in this eco-revolution, I should probably see the man behind it. There was a pause. A flicker of something in her eyes, surprise, maybe. Or calculation. Then she smiled. That'd be great. He'll love that. You two will get along. I nodded. I'm sure we will. Truth is, I wasn't nervous. I'd already done my homework. I'd seen the documents, the hidden debt, the fake consulting fees, the inflated projections. I knew more about Eli's company than Eli did. I knew what was real and what was fantasy, and I knew exactly how to push him off balance. The next day, we met at a quiet cafe Marissa recommended. That was my first clue she was still trying to control the optics. Neutral ground. Casual setting. Low threat. Except I'd already rehearsed the meeting a dozen times in my head. He walked in wearing a linen shirt and a forced smile. Still had that same smug charm I'd seen in the photos. The kind that says, "I've failed before, but this time will be different." It never is. "Dan, right?" he said, extending his hand. I shook it firmly. "Eli, good to finally put a face to the name." He sat down, ordered a green juice, and launched into his pitch. No hesitation. He was polished, I'll give him that. Years of trying and failing had made him fluent in the language of ambition. "We're not just building a company," he said. "We're building a movement. Decentralized, sustainable supply chains. Zero-waste logistics. Tech-forward thinking." I nodded, listening. But I wasn't here to be sold. I was here to study him. Halfway through, I cut in. "Let me ask you something. What's your current burn rate?" He paused. "Sorry, your monthly burn rate. How much are you spending versus revenue?" He blinked. "Well, we're still in growth mode, so profitability isn't the primary focus." "I'm not asking about profitability. I'm asking how long before you run out of money." He shifted in his seat. "It's tight, but we're expecting another round of funding soon." I smiled. "From who?" He glanced down. "Well, Marissa mentioned you might be interested." There it was. The hand extended. The ask, indirect, but desperate. I leaned in. "Let me be very clear, Eli. I don't invest in fantasy. I invest in viability. And what you're running, it's not a business. It's a bonfire. You're lighting matchsticks and hoping someone else brings the water." His face flushed. "With the right backing, this can scale." "Sure," I said. "And I can sprout wings and fly." He tried to recover, but I was already done. I stood up, dropped a $20 bill on the table. "Here," I said. "Cover your juice. Consider it my investment." I walked out before he could respond. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, Marissa cornered me. "What happened?" she asked, eyes wide. "Eli said you were rude." I shrugged. I asked him questions. He gave me slogans. She frowned. "He's under a lot of pressure." "I'm sure. But pressure reveals cracks." She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. She just stood there, silently, like someone who'd bet everything on a hand that was suddenly falling apart. And that's when I saw it. Fear. For the first time, real fear. Not because she cared about Eli's pride, but because she realized I was no longer playing the role of the distracted husband. I wasn't passive. I wasn't ignorant. I was making moves, and she couldn't read them. That night, I opened the safe in my home office, pulled out every document, deeds, contracts, policies. I started organizing them by what was shared and what I could now shield. She'd made her play. Now it was my turn. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to dismantle her world, piece by piece. And when I was done, she'd wish I'd just walked away. Some people snap when they're betrayed. They yell, break dishes, throw clothes out on the lawn. That's not me. I go quiet. And I plan. You see, pain doesn't cloud my mind. It sharpens it. And the deeper the betrayal, the more precise I become. Marissa thought she had the upper hand because she controlled the narrative. But stories unravel when you start pulling threads, and I had gathered every one of them. While she focused on Eli's sinking startup, I turned my attention to our shared assets. I knew the divorce would come, sooner or later. But I wasn't about to let it be messy. I wanted it engineered. Cold. Legal. Brutal. First, I set up a meeting with a second lawyer, someone who specialized in asset shielding and high-conflict divorce. Discreet, intelligent, and thorough. I handed over every document, every transfer she'd made, every shady expense labeled consulting. He didn't flinch. "This is enough to make her look financially reckless," he said. "Possibly even criminally negligent, depending on how the funds were misrepresented." I just nodded. Next, I quietly adjusted our household finances. I rerouted all future income into accounts solely in my name. I froze any unnecessary joint accounts under the guise of fraud prevention. Marissa didn't even notice. She rarely checked balances. She assumed they were always full. Then I pulled the biggest card I had, the shell company I used to invest in Eli's business. I moved the shares, on paper, into a different holding entity, one she had no visibility into. This meant that when the time came to expose her, she couldn't claim any stake or insight into what I was about to do. You'd be amazed what a little foresight and legal paperwork can accomplish. Meanwhile, I kept feeding her rope. I asked more questions about Eli. Asked to see revised budgets. Asked about their projections. All with fake interest. She thought I was warming up to the idea. She started letting things slip. "We just need a few more weeks," she said one night. "Then the platform will be live. He's already talking to a small VC firm. If they see you're backing him, they might jump in too." That's when I knew she still didn't get it. She thought I'd forgotten everything that came before. That I was just a supportive husband who got over his doubts. That she'd charmed me back into position. But what she didn't know was that I'd already attended a closed-door investor call with that same VC firm she mentioned. Quietly. As Daniel C., from a firm that I created just for this purpose. They didn't know I was her husband. They just saw a potential co-investor with sharp questions. When I asked about Eli's valuation, one of the junior partners chuckled. He says it's worth $10 million. We did the math, closer to $250,000 in tech assets. And that's generous. Then the real blow. He name-dropped a partner company, yours. Thought we wouldn't check. You should know. We don't like being lied to. That call sealed it. I was done pretending. I scheduled a final sit-down with Eli. Just him and me. Marissa wasn't invited. He showed up at my office thinking it was a strategy session. I had 2 binders ready, one with all the financial holes in his business, and the other with a legal agreement I drafted. I slid both across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "Truth," I said. "And your only way out." He flipped through the binder, receipts, fake invoices, debt logs. His face paled. Then he glanced at the second folder. "I'm offering to buy you out. $1, I said. "In exchange, you sign over your interest, exit the company, and never contact Marissa again." He scoffed. "You can't be serious." I leaned back. "Do you want me to go public with this? Because I promise, there's enough in that binder to bury your name in every investor blacklist from San Diego to Seattle. Or you can take the dollar. Walk away. Start over." He stared at me. Angry. Beaten. Quiet. And then he signed. I left the office with the papers in hand. Victory wasn't loud. It was silent. Precise. Unstoppable. That evening, I made dinner. Something simple. Pasta. Wine. She walked in like nothing had happened. "Hey," she said, kissing my cheek. "You're in a good mood." "I closed a deal today," I replied. She smiled. "Nice. For what?" I smiled back. "You'll find out soon." Because the game wasn't over yet. I still had the queen to corner. After I bought Eli out and erased him from the business, I expected Marissa to notice something. Maybe a shift in tone, maybe some subtle sign that her little secret empire was starting to crumble. But nothing. For days, she acted as if everything was normal. Like Eli was still in the game. That's when I realized he hadn't told her. Whether it was shame, fear, or some misguided loyalty, Eli kept his mouth shut. I guess even he understood the weight of the leverage I held now. So I waited. Patiently. I played the part of the curious husband a little longer. Asking about the project, pretending I was still considering an investment. I wanted to hear how far she'd go with the lie. And let me tell you, she went deep. "We've got a meeting next week with a new advisor," she said one morning, pouring coffee like she hadn't just spent the last year lying through her teeth. "Eli thinks he can help tighten up our projections." I just nodded, like I didn't already own everything Eli ever touched. She was living in a collapsing castle and had no idea I'd already taken the foundation out from under her. But the real twist? That came 2 days later. A friend of mine, another contact in the venture world, sent me a message. "Hey," he wrote, "isn't this your wife?" Attached was a photo from a startup networking event in Austin. Marissa, front and center. Not with me. Not even in town. But standing beside a new group of people pitching the same ecotech platform as CEO. That was the moment I understood how far she'd gone. She wasn't just funding Eli's business. She'd taken it over. She'd rebranded herself as the face of the company and started doing press runs, interviews, networking, selling a story built on a lie I'd already dismantled behind the scenes. And it didn't stop there. When I searched her name online, I found an interview she did with a niche startup podcast. Her voice, confident, upbeat, floated through my headphones as I sat in my office. "We're building more than a product," she said. "We're building a legacy. My husband is supportive, but he prefers to stay behind the scenes." Supportive? I laughed out loud. The audacity was almost impressive. That night, I didn't say a word. I just smiled and poured her wine like everything was perfect. Because now I wasn't just holding the knife. I was choosing when to twist it. I pulled out the final piece I'd been building. A full legal dossier. Every misappropriated fund. Every forged connection. Every lie tied to her name. I hired a litigator to prepare a pre-divorce petition, so detailed it read like a criminal brief. But I didn't file it. Not yet. Because I wanted her to walk right into the final phase of her performance, thinking she was untouchable. I started letting her talk more. About the company. About scaling up. About future investors. She seemed euphoric, finally believing she had everything under control. "I think we're really getting momentum," she said one night. "We might even move operations to Austin full-time." I nodded. "Sounds exciting." She paused. "Would you ever consider relocating? I mean, if things take off." I looked at her, and in that moment, I realized something darkly poetic. She wasn't just planning to leave me. She was hoping I'd come with her. She wanted me to support the new life she built from lies, to uproot myself and follow her into a world she'd stitched together behind my back, using my money, my name, my trust. And somehow, she still thought I might say yes. I didn't, but I smiled. "You never know," I said. "Maybe change is exactly what we need." Because I wasn't done. Not until the lights came on and she saw the full stage she'd built, with me pulling every single string. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't happen all at once. It builds, brick by brick, lie by lie. And if you're not careful, you start thinking the structure around you is solid, when really, it's a house of cards waiting for the right gust. And I was the storm. By this point, I had everything I needed. I'd quietly collected every receipt, every misstep, every legal crack she'd created in the name of ego and ambition. I had the company under my control, the investors on my side, her trail of lies fully documented. But I wasn't ready to go nuclear yet. I wanted her to see the detonation coming, just not soon enough to stop it. So I played along a little longer. I asked questions like, what would the launch plan look like? Should we get a financial advisor involved? What happens if one of your early investors wants out? She answered every one with glossy confidence. Her face lit up when she spoke about scaling sustainably and vision alignment. Buzzwords, polished and empty. She thought I was impressed, but every word she spoke only made my strategy more precise. Then I triggered the first domino. I scheduled a meeting with her, pretending it was about finalizing the LLC paperwork she said we'd eventually need. I made it seem like a gift, me officially stepping into a support role. She was thrilled, said she'd bring all the relevant files. What she didn't know was that the lawyer in that meeting room was already working for me, that the documents she'd be signing were part of a corporate severance maneuver I'd built to remove her from any legal claim to the business. She signed them without hesitation, smiling. "I can't believe you're actually doing this," she said. "You've changed so much." I smiled back. "You have no idea." Over the next few days, I put the final pieces in place. A press release was drafted announcing a change in executive leadership for the company, scheduled to go live in 1 week. New branding materials were created. I had someone rework the company website to remove all references to Marissa, her photo, even her bio. It was surgical, and she still had no idea. Until one night, 5 days before the release, I planted the first clue. We were having dinner, and I casually asked, "Hey, I noticed the company site was down earlier. You guys doing updates?" She froze, only for a second, then said, "Probably just back-end maintenance. Eli's old developer still has some access." I nodded. "Makes sense." The seed was planted, and she bit. The next morning, I watched from my office as she panicked. Phone calls. Laptop open. She thought something was wrong with the server. Thought someone had hacked them. I listened from the hallway as she snapped at someone over the phone. "No, I am the CEO. Why would the homepage say otherwise?" I smiled. She still hadn't checked the paperwork she signed. And that was the genius of it all. She'd walked right into her own removal and handed me the keys without even asking what they unlocked. The next day, I called a meeting with our shared accountant. Marissa joined via Zoom, assuming it was routine, but I had sent him a full financial breakdown in advance. When she logged in, he opened the call with, "Marissa, I wanted to go over some unusual allocations and a few legal inquiries we've received regarding company expenses linked to a personal trust." Her face changed. The mask cracked. She looked at me. "What's this about?" I leaned forward. "Just want to make sure everything's in order. You've been handling a lot." She swallowed. "Yeah, of course." But I saw it. The flicker of dread. The dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. That something bigger was moving beneath her. She hung up early, claiming she had another meeting. And then she went quiet. No more startup talk. No more investor updates. Just a slow, sinking silence. I gave her 3 days. 3 days to wonder. To spiral. To realize she was no longer holding the wheel. And on the morning of the 4th day, I printed the final document. The divorce petition. You ever watch someone realize they've lost everything and they can't even blame anyone but themselves? It doesn't happen with screaming or fists. It's quieter. Like watching glass shatter in slow motion. That was Marissa, the morning I handed her the divorce papers. She was at the kitchen table, still in her robe, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. Calm. Unaware. The queen on her throne, reading headlines while the palace burned beneath her. I placed the folder on the table. She glanced at it, confused, then opened it. At first, she didn't understand what she was reading. Page 1. A formal petition for divorce. Page 2. A financial declaration outlining every misused dollar. Page 3. Statements of corporate ownership, company restructuring, and her removal as executive officer, signed, notarized, filed. Then came the attachments. Photos. Invoices. Her emails to Eli. Timeline of financial misconduct. I sat down across from her, silent. She didn't look at me, just kept flipping pages. Slower and slower. Her face went pale. Hands began to tremble. Finally, she whispered, You were watching me? I didn't blink. No, I was seeing you. Finally. Silence. Then her voice cracked, higher pitched now. You blindsided me. This is cruel. I raised an eyebrow. Cruel? Like using our joint savings to fund your ex-boyfriend's scam company? Like using my name to open lines of credit without telling me? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. So I kept going. Like pitching yourself as CEO of a company you didn't build, using my money, and pretending I was some silent partner? Tears welled up in her eyes now, but I felt nothing. Not out of spite, just clarity. This wasn't the woman I married. That woman died the moment she thought I'd never figure it out. You don't understand, she said, finally. It wasn't like that. I was scared. No, I said calmly. You were greedy. You wanted something shiny and new. And you thought I was too slow, too safe, too stupid to catch on. The words hit harder than I expected. Her posture shrank. She looked down, away from me, as if hoping I'd vanish. But I stayed, because I needed her to hear everything. I talked to your VC partner, by the way. I added. He knows. The firm knows. And your name? It's already been scrubbed from every page you ever appeared on. You're not getting another dollar from them. She gasped. I also spoke to the bank, I continued. Those loans you tried to attach to our company? Already flagged. You'll be lucky if they don't press charges. Her hands clutched the papers now, but it wasn't to hold them. It was to keep from falling apart. I leaned in one last time. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. I'm doing it to close the chapter. You ended the marriage long ago. I'm just signing the final page. She didn't respond, and I didn't wait. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. That afternoon, my lawyer filed the petition. My accountant finalized the financial shift. The PR team sent out the executive announcement. By sunset, everything she thought she controlled was gone. And I didn't feel rage or triumph. I felt light, like I'd been carrying a weight for years I didn't even know was there. I stood on my porch that night, watching the horizon change colors, and for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about what came next. You know what they don't tell you about getting your life back? It doesn't feel like fireworks or victory parades. It feels like silence. At first, it was strange, waking up without tension in the air. No more second-guessing her words, no more wondering who she was texting, no more pretending I didn't see what I saw. The house felt too quiet. The coffee too still. But after a while, I started to breathe easier. I changed the locks. Not just on the doors, but in my head. I took a few weeks off work. Not because I was broken, but because I needed space to figure out who I was without her. You'd be surprised how much of yourself gets buried under years of compromise. And slowly, something unexpected happened. I began to feel grateful, not for what she did, but for what it taught me. She thought she was building a new life. She didn't know she was freeing me to build a better one. I reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with during the years of quiet control. I joined a local entrepreneur group, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to be around builders, doers, people who didn't lie to get ahead. I revamped my own business, took risks I'd been afraid to take, said yes to things I'd always postponed. I even started writing again, Something I gave up long ago when my life became about being stable for someone who never valued it. My evenings changed too. Instead of silent dinners and forced small talk, I had peace. Books, music, conversations with people who inspired me. My house became a home again, not a battlefield. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. There were moments I'd see a photo of us and feel that sting. Moments I'd wonder if she ever truly loved me, or if I was always just a placeholder until something flashier came along. But those moments passed, and each time they did, I stood a little taller. I also started helping others, quietly. When a friend mentioned he suspected his partner was lying, I listened. I didn't tell him what to do. I just told him what I'd seen, what I'd learned. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. See, betrayal changes you. But healing, that's a choice. And I chose it, not because I'm strong, but because I'm done giving away my peace. Marissa? She tried reaching out once. An email. Short. No apology. Just a vague line about wanting to talk. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because the man she betrayed, he doesn't live here anymore. In his place stands someone sharper, stronger, and at peace. The world didn't end when she left. It began. The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did I do the right thing?